Subscribe to Storylab. Now, let's begin this one. The mountain air cut sharp through the Colorado dawn as Daryl Shea watched his graduating class run the obstacle course below. 27 years in Delta Force had taught him to read men like terrain maps. Every weakness, every strength laid bare under pressure. The 47 students below represented the cream of his academy's winter term, and in 3 weeks, they'd carry his reputation into the private military contracting world. His phone buzzed. Katie, his daughter, never called during training hours. Dad, her voice cracked like ice breaking. Dad, I need. The line went dead. Daryl's gut turned to stone. He'd learned to trust that instinct in Fallujah, in Kandahar, in a dozen places that didn't exist on official maps. He was in his truck before the phone hit the ground, barking orders into his radio for June Adams, his operations manager, to take over the morning session. The drive from his Telluride Academy to Denver took 4 hours. He made it in 2.5. Katie sat in the hospital emergency room, her face a road map of purple bruises. Her left arm hung in a temporary cast, and when she tried to smile at him, he saw the gaps where 3 teeth should have been. She was 19 years old, his only child. The reason he'd left Delta Force 5 years ago, to build something that mattered, to be present for the daughter he'd missed raising while fighting wars for men in suits. Baby girl. His voice came out rougher than he intended. She collapsed into his chest, and he felt her whole body shake. Not with tears. Katie had inherited his steel, but with rage. Tell me, he said. Wes's poker night. New Year's Eve. She pulled back, her gray eyes, his eyes, meeting his without flinching. Mom was hosting. 9 guys from his investment firm. They were drinking, getting loud. I was in my room, tried to stay out of it. Daryl's jaw tightened. Michelle had married Wesley Haley 2 years after their divorce, drawn to his money and political connections like a moth to a bug zapper. Daryl had kept his mouth shut, paid his child support without complaint, and maintained his relationship with Katie through weekly calls and monthly visits when his schedule allowed. One of them came upstairs, said he was looking for the bathroom. Tried to corner me. Katie's voice stayed level, clinical, the same tone Daryl used in after-action reports. I fought back. He called his friends, said I attacked him first, that I was drunk and crazy. Mom came up and just stood there. Watched them. The stone in Daryl's gut became lead. Which one started it? Kent Dugan. Big guy, red face, loud laugh. But they all participated, Dad. All 9 of them. Mom told them to teach me a lesson about respecting her husband's friends. Katie's voice finally broke. She held my phone so I couldn't call anyone. A nurse appeared with discharge papers. Daryl signed them mechanically, his mind already shifting into operational mode. He'd spent 2 decades learning how to dismantle threats, human, structural, systemic. This was personal, but personal didn't mean sloppy. It meant thorough. They drove to his downtown Denver apartment, the one he kept for recruiting trips and alumni meetings. Katie fell asleep in the guest room within minutes, her body finally giving in to exhaustion. Daryl sat at his kitchen table and opened his laptop. Wesley Haley had money, sure. $30 million mansion in Cherry Hills, founding partner at Haley Capital Management. But money didn't buy the kind of protection Daryl had built his career around. 9 men. He pulled up the firm's website and started taking names. Kent Dugan, Chief Operating Officer, former college football player, 2 DUIs swept under expensive legal rugs. Alan O'Neill, Senior Portfolio Manager, inherited wealth, known for aggressive behavior at country club events. Harold Joseph, Managing Director, clean public record, but Daryl's old contacts in military intelligence owed him favors. Carlton Moreno, VP of Operations, married with 3 kids, coached Little League. Dwayne Hickey, analyst, gambling debts, slept with his assistant. Jesse Loomis, junior partner, youngest of the group at 31, social media full of yacht parties and designer watches. Tyler Mead, head of acquisitions, divorced twice, history of harassment complaints. Rolando Barnett, chief financial officer, pilot's license, owned a ranch in Wyoming. Sidney Merritt, legal counsel, disbarred in California before moving to Colorado, somehow got reinstated. And Wesley Haley himself, the apex predator who'd let this happen under his roof. Daryl made copies of everything. Photos, addresses, daily routines scraped from social media and public records. His phone rang, Michelle's number. He let it go to voicemail, watch her name flash and disappear. The message she left was predictable. Katie had attacked Kent unprovoked. The men had only restrained her. She was out of control, needed psychiatric help. Daryl needed to get his daughter under control or else. He deleted it and called June Adams. "How's Katie?" June asked immediately. She'd been with him since the Academy's founding, a former Marine Corps intelligence officer with a talent for logistics and zero tolerance for bullshit. Alive. Injured. Furious. "What do you need?" "Cancel tomorrow's combat simulation. Move graduation up 2 weeks. I'm driving back tonight." Silence on the line. Then, "Daryl, what happened?" He told her everything. June had earned his trust in Baghdad when she'd walked into insurgent crossfire to drag out his wounded teammate. She'd earn it again now. "Jesus Christ," she breathed. "Your ex-wife is being dealt with. Focus on the academy. I need the graduating class ready for an accelerated final examination." "What kind of examination?" "The practical kind." June understood. "I'll have the team briefed by the time you arrive." "Daryl, they're going to want blood." "Good. So do I." The drive back to Telluride gave him time to think. Revenge was a dish best served with precision. He'd seen men destroyed by their own thirst for payback, watched them make mistakes that turned hunters into prey. This required discipline, strategy, the same cold calculation that had made him one of Delta Force's most decorated operators. More importantly, it required plausible deniability. 9 men vanishing in coordinated hits would draw federal attention. But 9 men experiencing unfortunate accidents over the span of a week? That was just bad luck. His academy sat on 200 acres of Colorado wilderness, tucked into a valley where cell service died and curious eyes couldn't reach. He built it with his Delta Force pension, his combat pay savings, and loans from contractors who knew his work. The curriculum combined unconventional warfare tactics with executive protection training. Everything from close-quarters combat to advanced surveillance to extraction under hostile conditions. His students were former military, former law enforcement, former intelligence operatives looking to monetize their skills in the private sector. They came to him because his name still carried weight in the community. They stayed because he delivered results. Every graduate of the Shea Academy commanded top-tier contracts and premium rates. And in return, they gave him loyalty. Dawn broke over the mountains as Daryl pulled through the academy gates. June waited in his office with coffee and a tablet full of personnel files. 47 students, she said. 32 from Army backgrounds, 8 Marines, for Navy, 3 Air Force. Average age 31. All of them scored expert marksman or better. All of them passed the psychological evaluation. "Psyche evals don't measure what I need," Daryl said. "I need people who understand that some debts can't be paid in court." June met his eyes. "You're asking them to commit murder. I'm offering them an opportunity to make the world a little cleaner." 9 predators who thought they could brutalize a teenage girl without consequences. If they want to decline, they can, but something tells me they won't. The graduating class assembled in the main briefing room at 0700. Daryl stood at the front, his presence commanding silence without a word spoken. These were hard men and women. And yes, 3 of the 47 were women, all of them more lethal than most male operators Daryl had served with. They'd spent 6 months learning his methods, absorbing his philosophy. Violence was a tool, and tools required precision. "Change of plans," Daryl said. "Final exam starts today. Optional participation. Those who complete it successfully will receive full graduation honors, my personal recommendation, and a bonus of $50,000 each." Murmurs rippled through the room. 50,000 was more than most of them would make in 3 months of private contracting. "The mission is unconventional," Daryl continued. 9 targets. High-value individuals with no official designations. They won't be missed by anyone who matters. Your objective is simple. Remove them from circulation permanently. Make it look accidental. Leave no evidence tying you to the scene. You have 1 week. He pulled up 9 photographs on the screen behind him. Kent Dugan, Alan O'Neill, Harold Joseph, Carlton Moreno, Dwayne Hickey, Jesse Loomis, Tyler Meade, Rolando Barnett, Sidney Merritt. These men assaulted my daughter on New Year's Eve while my ex-wife watched and did nothing. They left her with a broken arm, 3 missing teeth, and bruises that will take months to heal. They thought their money and connections would protect them. I'm here to prove they were wrong. The room went dead silent. Daryl let the weight of his words settle. If you're in, raise your hand. If you're out, leave now. No judgment, no consequences. This is above and beyond anything you signed up for. But I'm asking because you're the best, and because I believe in justice when the system fails. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Corey Crow, former Army Ranger, stocky and stone-faced, raised his hand. Zach Gentry followed. Former Marine Scout sniper, quiet and precise. Leo Poole, Walter Springer, Jeremiah Drew, Carol Padilla. One by one, every hand in the room went up. All 47. Daryl felt something in his chest tighten. Not all of these students would participate in the actual operations. He needed intelligence teams, logistic support, communication handlers. But their solidarity, their willingness to cross a line most people wouldn't even approach, told him everything he needed to know. Thank you, he said simply. June will organize you into teams. Each team gets 1 target. You'll have full access to our equipment lockers, our surveillance gear, and our intelligence network. I want detailed operational plans by 1800 hours today. Execution starts tomorrow at dawn. Questions? Marty Hurley stood. Former Delta, one of Daryl's own, recruited personally. Rules of engagement? There are no rules. Make them disappear. Make it clean. Make it permanent. What about the ex-wife? Daryl's smile was cold. She's mine. The teams worked through the afternoon with the efficiency Daryl had drilled into them. June coordinated like the maestro she was, assigning targets based on student skill sets and geographic logistics. Kent Dugan lived in Cherry Hills, a gated community with private security. Alan O'Neill had a condo in downtown Denver. Harold Joseph split his time between Colorado and a vacation home in Aspen. Each team studied their targets' routines, vulnerabilities, patterns. Daryl watched from his office, reviewing plans as they came in. Corey Crow's team wanted to stage a home invasion gone wrong for Kent Dugan. Messy, but plausible given the neighborhood's recent uptick in property crime. Zach Gentry proposed a hiking accident for Alan O'Neill, who ran the same trail every morning at 0600. The creativity impressed him. These weren't mindless killers. They were problem solvers who happened to be exceptionally good at violence. By evening, all 9 operational plans sat on his desk. June brought him dinner, steak and potatoes, his usual, and sat across from him while he ate. You know this can't be undone, she said quietly. I know. The FBI will investigate. Maybe not immediately, but 9 connected individuals dying in a week? Someone will notice. Let them notice. They won't find anything. Michelle will know it was you. Daryl set down his fork. Michelle held our daughter's phone while 9 men beat her unconscious. Whatever happens to her, she earned. June nodded slowly. What's the plan for her? She has a brother, Brandon Davenport, congressman from Colorado's 4th District. He'll try to protect her, use his political connections to shield her from consequences. But politicians only have power when they're clean, and Brandon Davenport isn't as clean as he thinks. You have something on him? I will. Give me 72 hours. The first target went down on day 2. Carlton Moreno coached Little League every Tuesday evening at a field in Littleton. He drove a Tesla, lived in a modest but comfortable home, and according to social media, was a devoted father of 3. None of that mattered to Walter Springer and his 4-person team. They waited in the parking lot after practice, watched Carlton load equipment into his trunk, waved goodbye to the other coaches. He never saw the nail strip they'd laid across the exit. His tire blew 2 miles down the road on a stretch of highway with no streetlights. Walter's team appeared like good Samaritans, offering to help change the tire. Carlton never suspected a thing. Why would he? They wore civilian clothes, drove a civilian vehicle, spoke with easy familiarity about the cold weather, and the Broncos' latest game. The sedative in the water bottle they offered him worked in 90 seconds. They drove Carlton to an abandoned warehouse in Commerce City, one of dozens June had scouted during the planning phase. When he woke, his hands were zip-tied to a metal chair. "What the hell? Who are you? Do you know who I am?" Walter pulled up a folding chair and sat. "You're Carlton Moreno. You're 43 years old. You have 3 kids, Emma, Nathan, and Sophie. You coach Little League because it makes you feel like a good person. But you're not a good person, Carlton. Good people don't hold down teenage girls while their friends beat her unconscious." The color drained from Carlton's face. "I don't know what you're." New Year's Eve, Wesley Haley's house. 9 men, 1 girl. Katie Shea. Do you remember her, Carlton? Do you remember the sound her arm made when it broke? Carlton's breath came in short, panicked gasps. "Look, that was a misunderstanding. She attacked us first. Save it." Walter stood. "Your family will be fine. They'll collect your life insurance, mourn you properly, remember you as the devoted father and coach. But you're going to disappear. And before you do, you're going to tell me everything about that night. Who suggested it? Who participated? Who held her down?" Carlton talked. They all did eventually. Walter's team recorded everything. Backup insurance, Daryl had called it, just in case things got complicated later. When Carlton stopped talking, Walter administered a second injection. This one was permanent. They staged it as a drug overdose, fentanyl, the plague of modern America, and left his body in a motel room in Aurora known for such tragedies. The manager who found and called it in as routine. Another victim of the opioid crisis. 1 down, 8 to go. Jesse Loomis died on day 3. The youngest of Wesley's poker circle, he lived in a penthouse loft in Lodo and drove a Maserati he couldn't afford. His social media presence screamed insecurity. Endless photos of bottle service at clubs, designer watches, private jets he didn't own but pretended to charter. Jeremiah Drew's team tracked his routines for 18 hours before spotting the pattern. Every Wednesday night, Jesse visited a high-end escort service in Capitol Hill. Professional, discreet, cash only. The kind of place that catered to men who needed to keep their recreational activities off the books. The team intercepted him in the parking garage. 3 operators, tactical precision, 0 witnesses. Jesse fought. Daryl had taught his students to expect that, but fighting drunk after a bottle of Macallan and whatever pills he'd popped at the club made him sloppy. They loaded him into a van, drove to the mountains, and staged a solo car accident on a winding road above Golden. The car went over a cliff, burned on impact. When the state patrol found him, the toxicology report showed alcohol, cocaine, and prescription Xanax in his system. Another tragic case of young wealth and poor judgment. 2 down. Daryl spent those first 3 days at the academy, monitoring communications and reviewing after-action reports. Each team checked in through encrypted channels, confirming successful completion or requesting support. June managed the logistics, disposing of surveillance footage, creating digital alibis, coordinating travel to keep all operators away from their targets until the last possible moment. Katie stayed in Denver, recovering under the care of Rachel Curtis, a trauma nurse Daryl had served with in Afghanistan. Rachel asked no questions and kept no records. She'd seen enough war to understand that some injuries happened in places medicine couldn't reach. On day 4, Michelle finally showed up. Daryl had expected her sooner. She burst into the Academy's main office at 1,400 hours, dragging Wesley behind her like a reluctant accomplice. June intercepted them before they reached Daryl's private quarters. "I need to see my daughter," Michelle demanded. Her voice had that edge Daryl remembered from their marriage, the one that came out when she wasn't getting her way immediately. "Katie isn't here," June said calmly. "Don't lie to me." Daryl took her from the hospital. Katie left of her own accord. "She's an adult. She can go wherever she wants. I'm her mother. You stood by and watched 9 men assault her." June's voice could have cut steel. "You held her phone, so she couldn't call for help. You don't get to claim maternal concern now." Wesley stepped forward, trying to play peacemaker. "Look, there's been a misunderstanding. Katie has always been emotional, dramatic. She has a history of exaggerating. Choose your next words carefully, Daryl said, appearing in the doorway. He'd let them into the building deliberately, wanting this confrontation on his terms. Because whatever you say next will determine how this conversation ends. Wesley's confidence faltered under Daryl's stare. For all his money and connections, he'd never faced a man who'd killed other men professionally. It showed. Carlton Moreno died yesterday, Michelle said, switching tactics. Drug overdose. Isn't that convenient? Tragedy, Daryl said flatly. Man his age, 3 kids. You never know what demons people are fighting. And Jesse Loomis. Car accident. Also convenient. Reckless driving combined with substance abuse. The accident report was pretty clear. Michelle's eyes narrowed. You're not that clever, Daryl. The police will connect this. They'll see the pattern. What pattern? 9 successful businessmen living high-risk lifestyles? Statistically, a few are bound to die in any given year. Cars crash. People overdose. It's called probability. My brother is a United States congressman. Brandon Davenport, Daryl interrupted, Colorado's 4th District, serves on the Armed Services Committee and the Budget Committee. Married to Laura Gonzalez, daughter of a real estate mogul. 2 kids in private school. Nice guy for what I hear. Votes the party line, collects donations from defense contractors, maintains a clean image. Michelle's face went pale. Don't you dare threaten my family. I'm not threatening anyone. I'm stating facts. Brandon is your brother. He's protective. He'll want to help you. But politicians are fragile creatures, Michelle. Their careers depend on image. And images can be complicated when family members are involved in criminal conspiracies. I haven't done anything criminal. You witnessed a felony assault and did nothing. In Colorado, that's called criminal complicity. You also held the victim's phone, preventing her from calling for help. That's false imprisonment. Both carry jail time. And since Katie was your daughter, there might be additional charges. Child endangerment, perhaps, contributing to the delinquency of a minor. Katie is 19, was 18 on New Year's Eve. Her birthday was January 7th. Daryl smiled without humor. You forgot, didn't you? Her birthday. You forgot it, just like you forgot to protect her when she needed you most. Wesley grabbed Michelle's arm. We should go. Smart man, June said. They left, Michelle still sputtering threats about lawyers and police and how Daryl would pay for whatever he was doing. Daryl watched them drive away, Wesley's Mercedes kicking up dust on the access road. She knows, June said. She suspects. Knowing and proving are different things. What about the congressman? Brandon will make his move soon. He'll try to leverage his position, maybe call in favors with the FBI or the state attorney general. We need to be ready. June pulled up a file on her tablet. You said you needed 72 hours to find dirt on him. It's been 4 days. I lied. I already have it. The file detailed Brandon Davenport's carefully hidden secret. Offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, funded by kickbacks from defense contractors he'd helped secure government contracts. Nothing egregious by Washington standards, but enough to destroy his career if it became public. Daryl had acquired the information through Benny Yates, one of his graduates who now worked in financial intelligence for a corporation that asked no questions. Benny owed Daryl his life, literally. Daryl had pulled him out of a blown ambush in Syria during a contractor operation gone sideways. Debts like that came due when called. Insurance, Daryl said, handing June the file. If Brandon gets too involved, we leak this to the Denver Post. Anonymously, of course. You're playing a dangerous game. I've been playing dangerous games since I was 22 years old, June. This one just happens to be personal. By day 5, 3 more targets have fallen. Harold Joseph suffered a fatal heart attack during a business lunch in Boulder. The autopsy showed advanced coronary disease. Nothing suspicious about a 56-year-old man with high cholesterol and a stressful job dropping dead in a restaurant. What the autopsy didn't show was that Digitalis Corey Crow's team had slipped into his drink, mimicking cardiac symptoms perfectly. Alan O'Neill's hiking accident happened exactly as Zach Gentry had planned. The trail was treacherous, the weather conditions poor. O'Neill slipped on wet rocks, fell 40 feet into a ravine, and broke his neck on impact. The park rangers chalked it up to poor judgment and inadequate footwear. Tyler Mead disappeared on a fishing trip to his cabin in the mountains. His truck was found at the trailhead, his gear still packed in the back. Search and rescue teams scoured the area for 3 days before calling it off. Colorado's wilderness claimed a dozen people every year. Tyler became another statistic. 5 down. 4 to go. The remaining targets were the hardest. Kent Dugan, the ringleader, had gone to ground after hearing about the deaths. He'd stopped going to work, hired private security, and holed up in his Cherry Hills mansion. Dwayne Hickey had fled to Las Vegas, probably hoping to wait out whatever was happening. Rolando Barnett was in Wyoming at his ranch, surrounded by open space and dogs that would alert to any approach. And Sidney Merritt, the lawyer, had lawyered up himself, hired a security consultant, and filed a police report about feeling threatened. None would save them. Darrell assembled his best operators for a briefing on day 6. Corey Crow, Zach Gentry, Leo Poole, Carol Padilla, and Marty Hurley, all former special operations, all personally trained by Darrell at various points in their careers. Kent Dugan is the priority target, Darrell said. He initiated the assault on Katie. The others followed his lead. I want him to know why he's dying before it happens. The security at his house is professional grade, Corey said, studying the surveillance photos. Cameras, motion sensors, armed guards patrolling the perimeter. Getting inside without being seen is going to be difficult, so don't be unseen. Be expected. Marty grinned. You want us to walk in the front door? Ken is paranoid right now. He's seeing threats everywhere, but he still has to maintain appearances. Can't let his business partners think he's losing his mind. Tomorrow morning, he has a meeting scheduled with his estate planning attorney at 1,000 hours. The attorney's office is in downtown Denver, 7th floor of a building with terrible security. That's where we take him. Risky, Leo said. Broad daylight, office building, lots of witnesses, which is why Kent won't expect it. His security will be focused on protecting him at home. They won't anticipate an attack in the middle of a business meeting. Zach nodded slowly. We pose as office workers. Blend into the building's normal traffic. Hit him in the elevator or the parking garage after the meeting. Exactly. Carol, you'll handle the attorney. Make sure he understands that cooperating keeps him alive. The rest of you divide into 2 teams, extraction and cleanup. Kent doesn't leave that building breathing. They spent the rest of the evening refining the plan. Darrell insisted on precision. One mistake, one witness who saw too much, one security camera they missed, and the whole operation could unravel. But his team was good. The best. They'd been training for scenarios exactly like this. High-value target extractions in urban environments, operating in civilian clothes without military support. The only difference was the target was American and the extraction was permanent. Kent Dugan died on day 7. The operation went flawlessly. Carol intercepted the attorney in the building's parking garage, convinced him to call Kent, and confirm the meeting location. Corey's team waited in the 7th floor hallway, dressed in business casual, carrying briefcases that contained suppressed firearms and zip ties. Kent arrived at 0955, flanked by 2 private security guards. He looked haggard, sleep-deprived, paranoid, jumping at shadows. Good. Darrell wanted him afraid. The attorney's office was small, cramped, with a window overlooking downtown Denver. Kent sat in the guest chair, his guards waiting outside in the hallway. The attorney, a nervous man named Patterson, went through the motions of discussing estate planning while watching Kent with barely concealed fear. At 10:37, the building's fire alarm went off. Chaos erupted. Office workers poured into hallways, heading for the stairwells in orderly but hurried streams. Kent's guards moved to protect him, but in the confusion, they were separated. Corey's team moved with surgical precision. 1 suppressed shot each for the guards, bodies dragged into empty offices, doors closed and locked behind them. Kent made it 3 steps toward the stairwell before Leo Poole tackled him from behind. They dragged him into a maintenance closet on the 8th floor while Zach disabled the security camera outside. Who are you? Kent gasped, struggling against zip ties. What do you want? Marty Hurley pulled up a photo on his phone. Katie's hospital picture. The bruises. The broken arm. The missing teeth. Remember her? Kent's eyes widened. Look, that was a mistake. It was a choice. You chose to hurt her. You chose to lead 8 other men in assaulting a 19-year-old girl while her mother watched. You chose to laugh about it afterward. How do you? Carlton Moreno told us everything before he died. So did Jesse and Harold and Alan and Tyler. They all talked eventually. They all explained how it was your idea. How you convinced them Katie deserved it because she disrespected Wesley's authority. Kent thrashed against the restraints. You can't do this. I have connections. You had connections. Past tense. Now you're just another statistic. Marty nodded to Corey, who produced a syringe. This is what we call poetic justice, Kent. You wanted to hurt someone weaker than you. Now someone stronger is hurting you. The difference is we're professionals. We don't get caught. The sedative worked quickly. They staged Kent's death as a suicide, hung him in his own garage after the building's fire alarm proved to be a false alarm, and everyone returned to normal operations. His security found him that evening. The police investigation concluded he'd been suffering from depression and paranoia, possibly drug-induced psychosis. Case closed. 6 down. 3 to go. Dwayne Hickey lasted until day 8. Carol Padilla tracked him to a casino in Las Vegas, where Hickey was hemorrhaging money at a blackjack table and drinking heavily. The casino had security, sure, but Vegas security was paid to watch for cheaters and card counters, not for professional killers waiting in parking garages. Hickey died of acute alcohol poisoning in his hotel room. The paramedics who responded found him surrounded by empty bottles and gambling debts he'd never pay. Another sad story in a city full of them. 7 down. Rolando Barnett proved trickier. His Wyoming ranch was isolated, well-defended, and he'd stopped leaving the property entirely. But isolation worked both ways. Leo Poole's team approached on foot through the wilderness, avoiding roads and cameras. They waited until 0300, when Barnett was asleep and his dogs were kenneled, then breached through the back door using techniques June had taught them. Barnett woke to find 5 armed operators in his bedroom. He reached for the gun in his nightstand. Predictable, Daryl had said, and Leo shot him twice in the chest before he could raise it. They staged it as a home invasion robbery gone wrong. The local sheriff bought it immediately. Rural Wyoming had been dealing with property crime for years. 8 down. Sidney Merritt was the last of the 9 poker players, and he knew he was next. He'd hired a former FBI agent as his personal security consultant, stopped going to work, and filed restraining orders against anyone even tangentially connected to Wesley Haley. None of it mattered. Benny Yates, financial intelligence specialist turned operative for this mission, tracked Merritt's money movements and found the weakness. Sidney was planning to run. He'd booked a flight to Argentina under a false name, arranged for a wire transfer to an offshore account, and purchased a property in Buenos Aires through a shell corporation. He was going to flee the country and hope Daryl couldn't reach him across international borders. Stupid. Zach Gentry's team intercepted him at Denver International Airport on day 9. Sidney made it through security, got to his gate, even boarded the plane. But he never took off. Federal air marshals removed him from the flight after receiving an anonymous tip about suspicious activity. Daryl's doing, facilitated by contacts in TSA he'd cultivated during his contracting days. Sidney was escorted back through the airport, cursing and threatening lawsuits, when Zach's team grabbed him in a quiet corridor near the baggage claim. They sedated him, loaded him into a wheelchair like a sick passenger, and rolled him straight out of the airport to a waiting van. He died in the mountains that night. They dumped his body in a ravine where it wouldn't be found for months, maybe years. The missing persons report would go nowhere. Sidney Merritt had simply vanished. 9 down, 0 to go. Michelle Davenport tried to flee the country on day 10. Daryl got the alert from June at 0600 hours. Michelle had booked a flight to Mexico City under her maiden name, using a credit card Brandon had provided. She told Wesley she was visiting her sister in California. Wesley, spineless as ever, had believed her. Daryl made a single phone call to Jamie Daniels, an FBI agent who'd worked joint operations with Delta Force in Afghanistan. Jamie owed him a favor. Several favors, actually, involving a firefight outside Kabul and Daryl pulling her team out of an ambush that should have killed them all. I need someone stopped at customs, Daryl said. Michelle Davenport, traveling under Michelle Sullivan. Flight 447 to Mexico City, departing 0830. What's the charge? Flight risk in an ongoing investigation. Her daughter filed assault charges against 9 men, several of whom are now dead or missing. Michelle was a witness to the assault and may have participated. Local police want her for questioning. Is that true? Does it matter? Jamie sighed. I'll make the call. But you owe me for this one. Add it to my tab. Michelle was pulled from a boarding line at 0815. She screamed, threatened, dropped Brandon's name like a magic spell. The customs officers didn't care. They had orders from federal law enforcement to detain her for questioning. Daryl watched the whole thing through security camera feeds June had accessed. Watching Michelle's face as she realized her escape route was closed gave him more satisfaction than 9 dead bodies ever could. Brandon Davenport called Daryl's cell phone at 0932. You son of a bitch, Brandon snarled. What the hell did you do? Congressman Davenport. What a pleasant surprise. My sister is being detained at the airport because of you. I know it was you. The police wouldn't act without pressure, and you're the only one with motivation to go after her. Your sister witnessed a felony assault on her own daughter and did nothing to stop it. She held Katie's phone while 9 men brutalized her. She's lucky I'm letting the legal system handle her instead of handling her myself. You killed those men. Don't try to deny it. 9 people connected to that night, all dead or missing within 10 days. The FBI might be stupid enough to call that coincidence, but I'm not. I've been running a private military contractor academy in Telluride, Congressman. I have 47 witnesses who can confirm my whereabouts for the last 2 weeks. I haven't left the property except to visit my daughter in the hospital. If you're suggesting I somehow orchestrated the deaths of 9 separate individuals while training students 200 miles away, you're going to need more than suspicion. I will destroy you, Shay. I have connections you can't imagine. I'll have federal investigators crawling up your ass until they find something. That's interesting, because I have connections too. And mine are the kind that dig up financial records. Offshore accounts, for instance. Cayman Islands. Deposits from defense contractors. You've helped secure lucrative government contracts over the past 5 years. I have account numbers, transaction dates, wire transfer records. All very detailed. All very illegal. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for 10 seconds. You're bluffing, Brandon finally said, but his voice had lost its edge. Am I? Tell me, Congressman, how would your colleagues on the Armed Services Committee react if they found out you've been taking kickbacks? How would your voters react? More importantly, how would the Justice Department react? You leak that information, and I'll know it came from you. Will you? Because I'm just a retired Delta Force operator running a training academy. I don't have the resources or expertise to conduct international financial investigations. But you know who does? Investigative journalists. Whistleblowers. Disgruntled former staffers. Any of them could have discovered your dirty laundry and decided to do the right thing. What do you want? I want you to leave me alone. I want you to stop protecting your sister. She made her choices, and now she gets to live with the consequences. You interfere again. You make one more phone call trying to shield her, and every newspaper in Colorado gets a manila envelope full of your financial crimes. Do we understand each other? Brandon hung up. Daryl took it as a yes. Katie came home to the academy on day 12. She'd spent the last week recovering at Rachel's safe house, processing the trauma, and preparing herself for whatever came next. Rachel drove her up the mountain personally, stayed for coffee, and gave Daryl a look that said take care of her without speaking a word. How do you feel? Daryl asked after Rachel left. Katie sat on the porch overlooking the valley, watching his students run drills on the obstacle course below. Empty, relieved, angry, all of it at once. That's normal, is it? Because I'm sitting here watching your students train, knowing they killed 9 people for me, and I can't figure out if I should feel guilty or grateful. You should feel neither. Those men made a choice to hurt you. I made a choice to hold them accountable. You're the victim in this, Katie. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. She turned to look at him, her gray eyes, his eyes, sharp and clear. Mom called me yesterday, from jail, said I ruined her life. Your mother ruined her own life when she stood by and watched you get assaulted. She'll face trial eventually. Brandon won't be able to protect her forever. What about Wesley? Wesley is a coward. He'll divorce her, distance himself, claim he knew nothing. Men like him always do. Katie nodded slowly. And you? What happens to you? Nothing. I run my academy. I train my students. I visit you whenever you want. Just like that, 9 people die, and you just go back to normal. Katie. He sat beside her, took her hand. I spent 27 years in Delta Force. I've killed more people than I can count. Bad people, people who needed killing, but people nonetheless. This is no different. This is just the first time I killed someone for personal reasons instead of national security. And I don't regret it. Not for 1 second. She leaned her head against his shoulder. Thank you, Dad. You never have to thank me for protecting you. That's what fathers do. They sat in silence for a while, watching the sun set over the mountains. Below, the students finished their drills and headed to the mess hall for dinner. Life at the academy continued as it always had. June appeared in the doorway. Daryl, you have a visitor. Who? Wesley Haley. Katie tensed. Daryl squeezed her hand. Stay here. I'll handle it. Wesley waited in the office, looking smaller somehow. Less polished. The expensive suit couldn't hide the defeat in his shoulders. Mr. Shea, he said quietly. Wesley, you're trespassing on private property. Give me one good reason not to have you removed. I wanted to apologize. To you and to Katie. What happened at my home was inexcusable. I should have stopped it. I should have protected her. Yes, you should have. Why didn't you? Wesley's hand shook. I was drunk. They were my business partners. I convinced myself Katie had overreacted, that she provoked them somehow. I'm ashamed to admit I believed Kent when he said she'd attack him first. You believed it because it was easier than accepting your friends were monsters and your wife was complicit. Michelle told me you had them killed. Michelle is facing criminal charges and looking for someone to blame. I've been here at my academy the entire time. If she wants to accuse me of something, she can present evidence to the police. Wesley met his eyes. I filed for divorce yesterday. I'm selling the house. I'm liquidating my partnership in the firm. I'm leaving Colorado. Good. Get as far from my daughter as possible. For what it's worth. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I needed to say it. You're right. It doesn't fix anything. Katie will carry what happened to her for the rest of her life. Your apology is meaningless. Wesley nodded and left without another word. Daryl watched him drive away, then returned to the porch where Katie waited. Was that Wesley? Yes. What did he want? To apologize. Did you accept? No. Katie smiled. A real smile, the first Daryl had seen from her in weeks. Good. The investigation into the 9 deaths never gained traction. The FBI looked into it, sure. 9 men connected through business relationships, all dying or disappearing within a 10-day span. It seemed suspicious, but the evidence told 9 separate stories. Drug overdose, car accident, suicide, heart attack, hiking accident, missing person, home invasion, alcohol poisoning, and another missing person. No forensic evidence tied them together. No witnesses placed anyone suspicious at any of the scenes. The case went cold within a month. Michelle's trial proceeded slowly. She faced charges of criminal complicity and false imprisonment. Brandon Davenport kept his distance, issuing a bland statement about supporting his sister while respecting the judicial process. He made no calls on her behalf, pulled no strings, exercised none of his congressional influence. He'd learned his lesson. Michelle's defense attorney tried to argue she'd been coerced, threatened, manipulated by the man who'd assaulted Katie. The jury didn't buy it. They returned a guilty verdict after deliberating for 3 hours. The judge sentenced her to 8 years in prison. Katie testified at the trial, stood in front of her mother, and described every detail of that New Year's Eve night. Never wavered, never broke down, never gave Michelle an inch of sympathy. When it was over, she walked out of the courthouse with her head high. Daryl was waiting outside. How do you feel? He asked. Like maybe I can breathe again. They drove back to Telluride together. Katie had enrolled in online classes at Colorado State University, studying psychology with a focus on trauma recovery. She'd moved into a small apartment in town, close enough to visit the academy regularly, but far enough to maintain her independence. She was healing. Slowly, painfully, but healing. The Shea Academy graduated its winter class 3 weeks later. All 47 students received their certifications, their recommendations, and their bonuses. Several stayed on as instructors. Others took contracts around the world. A few joined Daryl's special operations consulting team, the one that didn't officially exist but took jobs governments couldn't acknowledge. June organized the graduation ceremony with her usual efficiency. Families attended, photos were taken, hands were shaken. To outside observers, it was a normal day at a normal training facility. Only Daryl and his graduates knew the truth. Only they understood what they'd accomplished together. Only they carried the knowledge that sometimes justice required stepping outside the law. Corey Crow approached Daryl after the ceremony. "Hell of a final exam, boss. You all performed exceptionally. I'm proud of every one of you. Will there be more opportunities like that? Similar situations where conventional justice fails?" Daryl considered the question. "Maybe. Depends on what comes up. Why? You interested? We all are. You built something special here. Not just a training academy, a brotherhood. People who understand that some problems can't be solved by courts and lawyers. People willing to do what's necessary. That's a dangerous mindset, Corey. So is the world. Might as well have dangerous people on the right side." Daryl shook his hand. "I'll keep that in mind." Months passed. Spring turned to summer, summer to fall. The academy thrived. Katie finished her first semester with straight A's. Michelle sat in prison, alone and forgotten. Wesley moved to Florida and became a ghost. Brandon Davenport lost his congressional seat in the midterm elections after leaked financial documents revealed his offshore accounts and kickback schemes. The Denver Post ran a multi-part expose that destroyed his career. He faced federal corruption charges and pleaded guilty to avoid trial. Daryl never claimed responsibility for the leak. But Benny Yates sent him a bottle of whiskey with a note that said simply, "Debts paid." On New Year's Eve, exactly 1 year after the assault, Daryl and Katie sat on the academy's porch watching fireworks explode over distant Telluride. She gained back the weight she'd lost. Her arm had healed completely. She'd gotten dental implants for the missing teeth. Physically, she looked whole again. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "Regret what?" "What you did. Having those men killed." Daryl thought about it honestly. "No, I've done a lot of things in my life I regret. That's not one of them. I thought I'd feel guilty about being the reason they died. But I don't. Is that wrong? They died because they made evil choices. You were their victim, not their executioner. You're allowed to feel relief that they can't hurt anyone else." Katie nodded. "I want to work with trauma survivors. Help other people who've been through what I went through. People who don't have fathers who can make their attackers disappear. That's good work. Important work. Will you help me? When I'm ready to start my practice, will you help me set it up? Whatever you need, baby girl. Whatever you need." The fireworks continued, painting the night sky in brilliant colors. Below, the academy sat dark and quiet, its students gone home for the holiday break. But they'd return. They always did, because Daryl Shea had built something that mattered. Not just a training facility, but a family. A brotherhood of people who understood that the world was cruel, and sometimes cruelty required an answer in kind. And if that answer happened to come from the shadows, delivered by professionals who knew how to make problems disappear, well, that was just another service the Shea Academy provided, for those who earned it. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.